29th day of January 2019. Heart of America Broadcasting Network, brought to you in part by our friends over at LibertyOneTech.com, the Unknown America Project, the Land Report, and a couple other folks that for Catholics. That is the theological version of the death penalty. These stories, and today is the release of Cliff Sims' book, Team of Vipers. We're going to get into that in just a little bit as well. A lot of folks might not be aware, but I used to work with Cliff. I'm not going to tell you that I know him terribly well, but his program did, in fact, come on after mine. And so we're pretty, geographically speaking, we are close together. So then there's that. So we've got an awful lot to be covering on today's broadcast, and phone numbers for those of you that want to chime in are 929-477-3761, 929-477-3761. So we're going to get a lot to get into, and an awful lot to discuss throughout the course of the day. Y'all hang tight for us 1 second. We're dealing with a little bit of technical difficulty, and we're going to see if we can't get this puppy worked out. So bear with us momentarily, because we have a lot to talk about on our end today. You're listening to the Michael Hart Show right here on the Heart of America Talk Radio Network. All right, gang, thanks for being patient with us as we had a squirrel we had to feed to get this puppy back up online. As you are well aware, we had somewhat of a nor'easter hit much of the United States. Whether we are kind of weather sensitive whenever we do anything that's broadcasting, it doesn't even matter if it's on the internet or terrestrial signal. We don't work off Wi-Fi here. We work off Ethernet, but or Ethernet, whatever you want to call it. I don't know, tomato. But nonetheless, it can have an effect on us. Although the weather, Birmingham, Alabama, the Deep South. In 2014, and I ended up sleeping in a radio station for 3 days after that blizzard came through, completely uncalled by the local press. And it seems like anytime they are not prepared for something else happens, or that happened. And so last night, the heavy-handed warnings throughout much of the Deep South that apparently did not come to fruition. So, yeah, I jumped up out of bed this morning. I was going to broadcast on a snowy, white morning. I was going to have my coffee. I've got my window drapes open because my office, my chair backs up to a window. And I was going to share this glorious, picturesque, it's a wonderful life kind of view, and no, it's not. It's just nasty and muddy and yuck out there. All right. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, of course, celebrated the passage of the abortion bill that legalizes abortion up to the point of birth in many cases, to the applause of progressives throughout the nation. But he also angered many religious leaders, especially in the Democrat governor's own professed Catholic faith. Now, understand a couple things here. Number one, I was raised a Catholic, and I was actually baptized a Baptist as well. And now I attend a, for all intent and purposes, non-denominational church. I don't care, just let me in. But the point out is that I have been confirmed as a Catholic. I understand Catholic doctrine, and I understand that the position that he has taken, Pelosi has taken, and many Democrats for that matter, is antithetical to Catholic doctrine. Now, we're not talking about, and I just want to make sure people understand something here, from the perspective of Catholicism, we're not talking about a Baptist that secretly sneaks across state lines on Saturday night to hit a little bit of shine every once in a while. For a Catholic to take a position on abortion, such as Pelosi and Cuomo, that is an excommunicatable offense. And again, think of it as something along the lines of theological impeachment. It is not good. And you have absolutely no right to attend church, to affiliate yourself, to claim the faith, or anything of that nature. And when, you have certain aspects, cultures, the Italians, the Hispanics, in some factions, in my case, the Irish, that are overwhelmingly Catholic, it can even affect your relationships within your family. So it's a big deal to be excommunicated from the church, because basically you're being kicked to the curbside and told to the rest of the faith that you're a sinner. And so, I understand that we are in the salvation sense, but I mean, it is like a public affirmation of how bad you really are. So with that said, and by the way, that's a very topical explanation, but it's a big deal. Cuomo held a public signing of the bill minutes after the Reproductive Health Act passed, moving abortion from a state criminal statute to the health code. The new law, of course, allows non-doctors to perform the procedure and allows for abortions up to the point of birth if the life or health of the mother is deemed at risk or the baby is not viable. Interestingly enough about that statement is that many people from the OBGYN community have suggested that you would know these things, viability of the fetus, for example, long before you ever got to the day of birth. Matter of fact, prior to even entering the third trimester. It's not so much the fact that people across the country, such as myself, think they're going to be aborting their babies on the last day of the term. It's not what we're saying at all. Our concern is the language in the bill would give doctors the opportunity to do that. It also gives nurse practitioners, who I understand are overwhelmingly qualified to do a lot of what they do, but nurse practitioners and midwives the legal right. So nonetheless, I have no intentions of getting into a long-form debate on abortion today, but the Catholic leaders are calling for Cuomo to be excommunicated for these, what they call flagrant celebration of a pro-abortion bill. We will continue to monitor this situation. I know for a lot of folks, you might be thinking, well, what difference does it make anymore, Hillary? Well, the reality of it is, it makes a lot of difference if we are going to have discussions in this country about Christianity and faith and the way and the responsibilities that they actually have. A lot of folks out there would suggest that Christians and Catholics are two entirely different things, and nothing could be further from the truth. So unless people really get their heads around what is taking place there, then you were going to, quite frankly, not have a clear idea of what the discussion is all about. Also, you probably have heard by now that Nancy Pelosi has given the green light on the State of the Union address. She just announced yesterday that she had invited President Trump to deliver the State of the Union on the 5th day of February. The invitation from Pelosi comes after a planned January 29 date to give the address was, scuttled due to the government shutdown. This obviously led to a very contentious back and forth between Trump and the White House before the president announced the deal to reopen the government on January 25th. Now, in somewhat of a associated story, Trump says that he doubts he will accept any deal that Congress strikes for the border wall. So we have got that tit for tat going on as well. So now, according to the letter from Pelosi to Donald Trump, when I wrote to you on January 23rd, I stated that we should work together to find a mutually agreeable date when government has reopened to schedule this year's State of the Union address. In our conversation today, we agreed on February 25th. Therefore, I invite you to deliver your State of the Union address before a joint session of Congress on February 5th, 2019 in the House chamber. Shortly after receiving the invitation, the President accepted, responding, quote, "Thank you for your letter inviting me to the State of the Union before a joint session of Congress on Tuesday. It is my great honor to accept. We have a great story to tell and yet great goals to achieve." That's going to be one that the base is probably not going to be too thrilled about. Why? Because he doesn't need Nancy Pelosi's permission to give the State of the Union address. The Constitution only calls for the president to address Congress or to actually report to Congress, quote, from time to time. So it's very interesting that his verbiage is along those lines. I look forward to seeing you on the 5th. Pelosi then later deemed her Monday conversation with the president very pleasant. We talked about things that we can work together on, such as infrastructure. This sounds so imbecilic to me. It's mind-numbing. The path to Trump's very first State of the Union in front of a Democrat House of Representatives obviously has been quite rocky. Pelosi first extended the invitation to the president just after our lawmakers joined the new Congress. In the case of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, inaugurated. This was proposing a January 29th date for the event, which is held in the House chamber, and Trump publicly agreed to deliver the address on that date days later. But then again, on January 16th, as you were well aware, Pelosi changed her mind, and here we are. So we have the government shutdown lifted temporarily, and then we've got the rescheduling. The checks go out, the back pay delivered, and then we're rescheduling the State of the Union address. And then we have the looming 15th of February. All right, real quickly, we're going to take a little bit of a respite here, reset the clocks, get ready to re-upload some audio for you guys as well. We're having a little bit of difficulty on our end, so y'all just hang tight. You're listening to the Michael Hart Show right here on the Heart of America Talk Radio Network. We're right back. Heart of America and The Michael Hart Show is brought to you in part by the Unknown America Project. Unknown America, myths and little-known oddities about the greatest nation on earth, explores many of the falsehoods and fallacies and revisions in American history that impact the beliefs and the thoughts of many people in this country today. So if you'd like to learn some of the most enduring myths that have been perpetrated on the American public for the last 100-plus years in this country, go check out the book at heartofamerica.net. That's heartofamerica.net. And pick up a copy of Unknown America. It comes out to you absolutely no shipping, be autographed, and we'll even send you a copy of the United States Constitution as our way of saying thanks. So support the Unknown America Project by simply going to theunknownamerica.com, and thank you for your support.
It's Andrew McLean here to remind you about my podcast, Over the Line. This is the podcast your mom warned you about, even though your mom doesn't really know what a podcast is. You really need to check it out. We have some great guests, amazing interviews, and we break down the political headlines of the day. If you want to be able to stay informed, entertained, and be able to win an argument on Facebook against those commie hippies, check out OverTheLineShow.com to listen to the latest show, check out some amazing merch, and see what's going on behind the scenes. Over the Line is also available on your favorite podcast platform, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, CastBox, and plenty more to make it as easy to listen to the show as possible. Again, make sure you go to OverTheLineShow.com, sign up for the newsletter, and keep up with the show, whatever we do, wherever we go, and keep yourself informed. That's OverTheLineShow.com, in memory of Haram.
It's the Michael Hart Show.
Come again?
The Michael Hart Show.
You know I don't speak Spanish. In English, please.
A liberal dose of conservatism.
How'd you do that? I'm not even mad. That's amazing.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Heart of America. This is Michael Hart coming to you live here on the 29th day of January in the year of our Lord. Phones are 929-477-3761. For those of you that are just tuning in for the very first time, we'd like to refer to this program as breaking down the news of the day through the prism of the past. And we also appreciate our good friend Andrew McLean that has been very supportive of this program. Obviously, we are supporting him as well. If you are a business owner, wherever you might be in the United States of America, and you would like to spread the message of the Michael Hart Show, you can do so for as little as $79 a month, and that allows you the opportunity to support us on Patreon. If you are just a patriot and you want to make absolutely certain that these messages get out, that we continue to educate people, if you support the Unknown America Project, just please go over to heartofamerica.net where you might be listening to the program. Click on the orange Patreon button. That gives you the opportunity to spend as little as $1 a month, $12 a year. Doesn't sound like a lot, but when it comes to buying new equipment and bandwidths and microphones and all that kind of stuff, this stuff ain't cheap to keep doing this, and I really do believe that that is our responsibility. So if you want to support the program, please go over there, sign up to be a patron. You can cancel anytime at all. Absolutely no obligation whatsoever, but it helps keep us on the air to talk about things like how much would Medicare for all costs, the Democrats' health care plan explained coming up, and then a little bit later on, about 15, 20 minutes or so, we are going to break down this book, Team of Vipers. I'm not going to break the book down so much as I want to talk about the media blitz, the Omarosa style of what I've seen. Have some interesting audio from Mr. Sims. Many of you within sound of my voice know exactly who he is, as he used to work at 101.1 in Birmingham, Alabama, which was my home station. There are quite a few people in this listening audience, again, that know exactly who he is, and I'm not going to talk so much. I'm not going to bust the guy's chops. I'm going to tell you what the media is saying. I'm going to tell you what people in the White House are saying, and I'm going to tell you, because I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I know every aspect of this guy's life, because truth be told, in kind of a disclaimer, I was not a fan. I'm just going to put it out there. I'm just not a real big advocate of Cliff Sims, and I'll tell you what I know to the degree that you know it. I'm not going to invite phone calls for anyone to lament their opinions about this particular person. But, is the book opportunistic? I think it is. Is it salacious? I guess I'll let you decide on that. But at the end of the day, I don't like the way the information was compiled. And there's some interesting observation from White House staffers that staffers of the company that I used to work for would have shared about their relationship with this particular individual. We'll get into that a little bit later on. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, his Medicare for All proposal is coming back in a major way as Democrat presidential hopefuls begin stumping for 2020. The government shutdown funded healthcare system, not the shutdown, but the funded healthcare system, strongly opposed by President Trump and fellow Republicans, would expand benefits beyond what is already offered under former President Barack Obama's Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. The legislation was first introduced in 2016 by Sanders, who said it would be another step towards achieving universal health care. During her speech to officially launch her 2020 run, Senator Kamala Harris declared health care, this is a quote, is a fundamental right, and vowed to serve her constituents by supporting Medicare for all. I guess we can debate whether or not health care is a fundamental right. Kind of implies that health is a fundamental right. I guess maybe if we just got together and legislated cancer out of existence, we could all call it a day. In 2017, August to be specific, Harris became the first Democrat senator to support Sanders' Medicare for All bill, going on to say it's just the right thing to do. Since then, 2020 candidates, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, former Secretary of Housing and Urban Development Julian Castro, Senator Elizabeth Pocahontas Warren, and Tulsi Gabbard have all endorsed the program. But while Democrats are embracing the plan, critics point to the soaring cost of implementing it, something numerous studies put well into the trillions. How much will it cost? All right. There doesn't seem to be much dispute that a single-payer system would require tax increases, since the government would essentially take over premiums now paid by employers and individuals as it replaces the private health insurance industry. The question is how much. I want to stop right there for just a moment. Many people that give me your ears in the morning or whatever know that I used to work for a corporate radio station. That station paid a good lump sum of my health insurance. When that station decided to change formats, I lost said health insurance. I investigated the health marketplace, didn't really like what I see, and for the short term, the next 5 to 6 months, I opted to go into the COBRA program, which is an acronym for Consolidated Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act. This makes me eligible to continue the exact same coverage with me paying the premiums. My premium for the month of February obviously is going to be due, what would you say, maybe February 1st, which is Friday. Said premium for me out of my pocket is $600 a month. No small amount. I say that only to give you the insight that I'm tearing into this particular Medicare plan despite the fact that it would have a very positive effect on my own finances if it was allowed to proceed. But to be intellectually fair, I see the folly in it. Yeah, another $7,000 a year in my budget wouldn't hurt my feelings at all. That's half a decent bass boat. Well, not if you're in Alabama. It's a quarter of a decent bass boat. So just bear in mind that as I go through this story, I am telling you something that does not work and should not happen, despite the fact that if it did, it would be an upside for me. Because the reality of it is, it doesn't matter who it looks like's paying the bill. All because government is paying the premiums. On the other side, if I'm having to pay more in taxes, who cares? I mean, who cares? It's like some of these stores that will put the price in the window and it's no taxes. Well, the taxes are just rolled into the product. You just don't see them. There's this whole economic illusion that takes place in this country that people just cannot seem to understand, whether they be ad valorem taxes or value-added taxes or sales taxes, whatever the case may be, you're paying the bill. They're just hiding it from you. They're going to get their money. You know, it's funny. You know, people talk all the time about certain states, and this is what, Joe Scarborough and Mika did to go to Florida because there's no Florida income tax, no state income tax. Well, guess what? My mother lives in New Hampshire. There's no income tax there either. But she lives about a block off of Lake Winnipesaukee. Remember the movie What About Bob? Richard Dreyfuss? You probably don't. No, my mom doesn't pay any state income tax. But some years ago, you know what she did? She got hit with a $7,000 view tax. My uncle, too. He lives up there as well. In Maryland, if you have read the book Unknown America, you would know this. In Maryland, you get a tax for flushing the toilet. Yep. Kid you not. I'm not talking about a tax on your water usage. I'm talking about a tax on flushing the toilet. Now, that's money that helps support the Chesapeake Bay restoration projects. But it's interesting that they've been restoring Chesapeake Bay for as long as I can remember. They're going to get the money out of you, folks, no matter how they cloak it, no matter how they pretend not to. Medicare for All is estimated to cost tens of trillions of dollars over a decade. Several independent studies have estimated that government spending on health care would increase dramatically in the range of about $25 to $35 trillion or more over a 10-year period. Specifically, a study released over the summer by the Mercatus Center at George Mason University estimated it would cost $32.6 trillion or $3.2 trillion per year over 10 years. For comparison, the federal budget proposed for fiscal year 2019, according to the Congressional Budget Office, is $4.4 trillion. The total budget. Sanders blasted the Mercatus Center's analysis as, quote, grossly misleading and biased. If every major country on earth can guarantee health care to all and achieve better health outcomes while spending substantially less per capita than we do, it's absurd for anyone to suggest the United States cannot do the same, according to Sanders. Now, a couple things stand out here. Guaranteed health care does not guarantee health outcome. Waiting in line for 6 months for a procedure is not great health care. It's not a better health outcome. Now, are there things where we could trim the fat out of it? Absolutely. We could talk about tort reform, which we never have. You can talk about alien insurers, which we rarely do, allowing the marketplace to compete instead of there being monopolies such as the Blues, for example, in some states. You can talk about healthcare coding requirements where some physicians have as many administrators as they do nurses on staff. There's a lot of things we could trim out of the bureaucracy of medicine that would lower those costs. But for Mr. Sanders to say that we are achieving better health outcomes while spending substantially less in other countries is simply a falsehood. He argued on his website that his plan would cost about $1.38 trillion per year. This is grossly misleading and biased reports is the Koch brothers' response to the growing support in our community for a Medicare for All program. Some analysis suggests that 74 million Americans who currently benefit from Medicaid and Medicare would face significantly higher taxes under Medicare for All. Who did the analysis? The New York Times. Every once in a while, they'll pop one. The average of what people would pay when you take into account taxes, premiums, and out-of-pocket costs would go down, according to Larry Levitt, Senior Vice President for Health Reform at Kaiser Family Foundation. Generally, lower-income people would end up paying less for health care, but higher-income people would pay a heck of a lot more. It depends on which taxes end up getting increased in order to pay for the brand new plan. Now, I don't want to get too deep in the weeds about this because economically speaking, people's eyes start to roll back in their head. But I do want you to consider things that if you have upper middle class, somebody in the upper echelon of the socioeconomic scale, and let's assume they own a house, they have a mortgage, they have cars, but now all of a sudden they are having to consider where they live, what they drive, what they do, etc. That has another negative impact on the economy. It's another form of trickle-down economics. It's just trickle-down economics on a micro scale. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. I'm not going to tell you that I'm broke, but, we run this operation on a very thin wire. It's one of the reasons we ask for your support. Right now, I'm self-funding this bad boy to keep it on the air because I think these things are important. There have been a handful of people that have supported us on Patreon and a handful more that support us privately. We appreciate that, but it's just enough to keep the lights on. So I have to watch every dime we spend because I'm willing to make that sacrifice. I'm willing to spend my money because I love this country that much. This is not just a podcast or an online radio program for me. Our good friend at Liberty One Tech's doing the same thing. taking time out of our days and our families to keep this broadcast on the air and even promote Andrews, even promote Joe Lockett's, even promote Amy Fuller on U2 America, even promote Megan Barth. Why? Because we think it's important. I say all that to say this. Because money can get tight in situations like this, which is why sometimes it sounds like we're pandering for dollars, and we are to a degree, because somebody's got to keep these lights on. You know, it's that same conservative argument, somebody's got to pay for it. Well, right now I'm the somebody. But the reason I'm bringing all that up is because my particular financial situation changed as it relates to this. And again, I'm not going to tell you I'm not going to eat. That's not what I'm saying at all. But when I have to go from basically nothing to $600 a month and covering my own insurance, yes, that influenced my decision as to whether or not I was going to buy a boat this spring. And that's kind of a micro explanation of what I mean. If for whatever the reason the middle class has to bear the brunt of these healthcare costs for the lower incomes, what happens to the mortgage market? What happens to the pontoon boat market? What happens to the automobile market? What happens to every single durable goods market out there? Now, I probably was not going to buy a boat that cost $600 a month. But when you add in insurance and gas and slip fees and all the wonderful things that go into a boat, I have to consider that. Am I willing to enter into the marketplace and get a subsidy on my health insurance premium so that I can afford a boat? I ain't willing to do that to people, because what you hear come out of my mouth is the way I really do roll. A lot of folks out there, like Mika and Joe, they talk out of one orifice and then they talk out of the other. I'm not perfect. I'm a sinner. I'm a fallen man. I'm a victim of temptation every day of my life, but darn, I try hard to get it right. I'm not going to sit here and bemoan your right to carry a weapon while I've got bodyguards, or that we shouldn't build a wall when I'm living behind one, or that I'm going to go out and spend money I don't have to buy something that I really don't need just for a few moments of pleasure, or to create the illusion that I'm something that I'm not. But the Medicare program as currently presented, according to Kaiser, according to the Mikado Center, and according to the New York Times, while it might be beneficial for the least among these, it's going to have a negative impact on the middle class, who's going to have to foot the bill, because, again, the money has to come from somewhere. And so, as almost always is the case, that does have an effect on what people do in terms of the middle class, whether or not they're going to purchase a new vehicle, take that vacation. And it's not because the money's not necessarily there, but it's because you got to hedge your liabilities. Now, I do have other business interests as well. So, again, I'm going to eat. But $600 a month was unanticipated. And if this thing goes through, that's what's going to happen to many people. And that's a lot of the reason, because you got to bear in mind something on the Democrat side of things, that you've got a lot of Democrats. There's a lot of wealth. Isn't it interesting that the majority of the wealth actually is in the Democrat Party, and so is the majority of the poverty? How does that work out? I wonder who's benefiting in that scenario. So nonetheless, we will continue to monitor the claims by Kamala Harris and Bernie Sanders and the rest of the ilk, but please don't fall victim to the idea that all of a sudden we're going to have single-payer health care for all and that it's affordable. If we want to make health care affordable in this country, let's take a much more pragmatic approach. Let's deal with things like tort reform, the insurance across state lines, the ridiculous bureaucracies of having to code everything they submit to an insurance company, which, by the way, would get worse under this particular plan. Something else that has not been considered, where the letter RU might mean a broken left arm, and now it's RU3 for a broken right arm 6 inches below the wrist. I mean, everything is coded differently. Doesn't sound like a big deal to you, but all that information has got to be submitted to the insurance company in a pristine way to receive payment for services provided. You still have a lot of providers in this country that are highly reluctant to accept cash payments. Do we need to revamp the medical health services industry in this country? Yeah, actually, we probably do. But the last place we need to start is sticking it in the hands of government to accomplish that goal. We come back on the other side, brand new, interesting hit piece, some would call it, on President Donald Trump. Our old friend Cliff Sims' book, Team of Vipers, comes out today. We've got some audio. We've got some interesting insights from Politico. We've got insights even from the European press. In addition to the fact, we'll give a little bit of insights from our own personal time of working with Cliff Sims every single day at the old 101. Take your calls also at 929-477-3761. You're listening to the Michael Hart Show right here on the Heart of America Talk Radio Network. The Land Report, the magazine for the American landowner, is a proud supporter of the Michael Hart Show. Currently, they're offering an exclusive subscription price for listeners of the Michael Hart Show. So click on the subscribe button on landreport.com and enter the code HARTSHOW at checkout and receive a 1-year discount on America's #1 land magazine. You'll get a full year of the Land Report, which normally goes for $59, for only $15. That's a 75% savings off the cover price. Again, that's promo code HARTSHOW at checkout of thelandreport.com, and make sure to check out the Land Report on Facebook if you love land.
Does your home have a water problem? Drainage around your home can cause all kinds of headaches. Disease-causing mold, cracks in walls, foundation failure, even roof leaks. At Alabama Water Management, we know that problems can often be fixed from where the water is coming from, outside. Our approach is less invasive and less expensive. So before you spend thousands on a potentially unnecessary waterproofing system, call Alabama Water Management for a free evaluation. Alabama Water Management. Don't waterproof, water prevent.
Find Alabama Water Management on Facebook or on their website at alah2o.com.
None shall pass. What? None shall pass.
I command you, as King of the Britons, to stand aside.
I move for
The Michael Hart Show.
You make me sad.
is a former Trump aide whose new book, Team of Vipers, has been making headlines all month. Please welcome to The Late Show, Cliff Sims. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Congratulations on is this your first book?
First book.
First book?
First and only, probably.
No.
We'll see.
There you go. Here it is. It's a Team of Vipers. That's a hell of a title. It's
All right, so that is Cliff Sims on the introduction on Stephen Colbert's program last night. Team of Vipers comes on, or is released rather, today. And, the thing is, for me, is that I'm always very suspicious of any book that is written by somebody that seems, for whatever the reason, to have an axe to grind. Now, in full disclosure, I know Cliff. I do not know him well. Frankly, I do not care to know him well. I worked with him at WYDE in Birmingham, Alabama. I was the morning host. He hosted a program which was a product of Yellowhammer Media in Alabama. Yellowhammer is a stand-up organization like those folks, and have done some things for the community that I'm highly supportive of. Over the time that I knew Cliff, again, he was on the air with a former state senator by the name of Scott Beeson. At some point in time, Beeson was released from those duties. Didn't really have that much of an effect for me. He was not an employee of this broadcasting company. He was the owner at that time of Yellowhammer News, who, in fact, had a fiduciary relationship with the company that allowed them to broadcast in the day part following me. With that said, he had eventually left Yellowhammer and went to Washington, D.C., not the first person from Crawford Broadcasting to achieve such a goal, but he left and went to Washington, D.C., to be on the staff as an advisor to President Trump. And that brings us pretty much to today, as we have another Omarosa-style book that is being released. In an article from Politico that was released just a day or so ago, President Donald Trump is dismissing Cliff Sims as the videographer, as former colleagues see the Team of Vipers author as a traitor. Now, he is on the public circuit right now, the media circuit. President Donald Trump is, and I'm reading from the article. I don't like to read from articles, but I'm giving you the perspective of what is being said in the other media. President Donald Trump is very pissed off and really hopping mad at former aide Cliff Sims' new book that reveals firsthand the chaos and infighting that is ever present in his White House, according to several current and former White House officials. Trump is asking aides, quote, "Who is this guy? Why is he writing this book? He wasn't even in meetings." Now, Sims does have a reputation of being in places that he, frankly, was never supposed to be. Many people are aware of football gate, so to speak, when John Kelly was chief of staff, and Cliff Sims, as a graduate of the University of Alabama, was to get a football signed from the president that would go back to Governor Kay Ivey. This was after the Alabama football team won the national championship. It's interesting that the whole stream of events was very Cliff Sims-esque. I'm not going to elaborate on that story because there have been some that suggested that just shows the complete fractious nature of the White House, which probably to some degree is true. But the point is that Sims had a reputation of being in places he was not supposed to be and in situations he was not supposed to be. And some have speculated that was purposeful for the purposes of writing this book. I do not know that to be the case. But according to sources, he also dismissively refers to Sims who served until last May as director of the White House message strategy and special assistant to the president as the videographer, because he also helped Trump with the weekly video and radio addresses, according to 3 current and former White House officials. Sims' tell-all book, Team of Vipers, My 500 Extraordinary Days in the Trump White House, is being released today. Advanced excerpts and leaks have revealed embarrassing anecdotes about Trump and damning portraits of several top White House aides. One former senior White House official said Sims has managed to do the impossible, unite an infamously fractious world of Trump advisors and associates. Basically, every warring faction has come together to push back against Sims, said a former senior White House official. You wouldn't believe the text chains. The best part is the president is sort of chomping at the bit to tap this guy and tweet something to the effect of, quote, I didn't know this guy. He simply taped videos. Now, the issue here isn't whether or not the Trump White House can be fractious at times. Frankly, they all can be to a degree. The issue is, what did Sims know? When did he know it? Why was he released? And is he credible? Now, some Trump advisors have urged him not to lash out at Sims that way. Their message to Trump, according to one White House official, is it's beneath you. You barely remember him. Go run the world. But it's unclear, and again, I'm reading from the article, how the impulsive Trump might react after the kickoff of Sims' official media tour, which began Monday with an appearance on ABC's Good Morning America, and then, of all things, The View. Now, what's interesting about Cliff Sims, and I think this more or less speaks to what I know of him, because here's what I do know of him and the things that he might have said within the book. There are people, again, that know this man better than I do. But I did work around him. I did have conversations with him, and I was in meetings as well. So for whatever this is worth to you, what I know is that I never trusted a thing that came out of the guy's mouth. There were times I asked for personal favors unrelated to the radio station that never came to pass, although I was assured they would. There was things that he said on the air that I knew to be not factual. I found him to be caustic and rude to callers, sometimes even not taking their calls or dismissing their points of view without any valid retort or response. As somebody that was leading a media organization while in the building, he made promises to local staff that never came to fruition. In other words, I found him to be basically a politician. Someone that would say anything at any time for any reason for any achievement. Were some of his promises to the company or to me personally earth-shattering? No. It's not a matter of whether or not, it's a matter of credibility. It's a matter of being taken at face value. It's a matter of, when somebody looks at you and says, hey, don't sweat this, I've got this, consider it done. It never got done. It never happened. Or if he was called on it, oh, forgot. I meant to get to it. I'll take care of it today, and yet it never happened. The point is that very frequently, in my brief time of knowing him, in brief time of being around him, I simply never found him to be credible. He certainly was likable enough. Last night, Colbert welcomed Cliff Sims to the Late Show. And according to AV News, while Colbert is always here to give airtime to anyone dishing manure-rich dirt on the Trump White House, the fact that the unassuming Sims, who spent a year and a half as the director of message strategy got first position over music legend Paul Simon might be considered odd, at least until the end of the interview. Sims, author of the latest Trump administration tell-all, Team of Vipers, listen to this, admitted to Colbert that of all of his regrets about serving under Donald Trump, one of his greatest is helping compile Trump's enemies list, and that, as Colbert reacted in mock disappointment, the Late Show host and nightly Trump basher was only slotted at number 2. So here you have Sims telling Colbert on Colbert's program that one of his greatest regrets was developing the list that Colbert was on. Does that even have a smattering of pandering to it? No, to me it has a whole heaping dish of it. Apparently there have been some admissions by Sims that he was one of the White House leakers, if not the primary one. In the book, Sims describes how he worked with Trump to create what Sims calls an enemies list of suspected leakers. Sims creates a list of leakers, which turns out to be the people he doesn't like, and the guy who makes the list turns out to be the multi-million-dollar leaker, said a current White House official. A person familiar with the matter confirmed that Sims had received a 7-figure advance for the book, a fact that the New York Times first reported in November. It's also interesting to note that, according to some in the European press, Sims has stated that he may very well return to the state of Alabama to take on Doug Jones in a Senate race. But at the end of the day, what we essentially see here is a man that has continually made statements that has demonstrated a lack of credibility, and the fact that he himself is one of the ones that he claims to be writing about. This from Colbert.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I wanted to
So are
illustrate.
you one of the Vipers?
100%. I mean,
so this is a confession as much as it is an accusation. I mean that seriously, because sometimes books can be. Is it a confession as much as it is an accusation?
Well, I think what it is if I'm going to tell the truth, if I'm going to be honest about everybody there, from the president to the staff and everybody else,
and that's a big if in that administration.
I've got to be willing to be honest about myself.
Now, a couple of things to bear in mind here is that he was, as the president points out, the videographer. And the president's saying, why is he writing this book? He wasn't even in any meetings. He was the White House message strategy. He served as director of White House message strategy and a special assistant to the president, although the president really doesn't have a lot of recollection about him. Now, there are pictures of him with the president. I'm not going to suggest that Trump doesn't know who he is. But doesn't it sound as though he is inflating his importance when he suggests to Colbert?
People out.
So that's kind of what I wanted to
So are
illustrate.
you one of the Vipers?
100%. I mean,
so this is a.
So he was 100% one of the Vipers, despite the fact Trump doesn't even really know who he is. Now, he may very well have been a Viper within the White House against Trump's own staff. But then he brought other things to bear, like, well, Kellyanne Conway as well.
You either get on board once he makes a decision and you try to implement what he does, or you quit.
Do you think more people should do that? Like Kellyanne Conway, you write about her, you describe her as, you say you caught her leaking, that she was a big leaker. Trump thought she was a big leaker. She had to write something to say, I'm not a big leaker. And what did you catch her doing?
Yeah, so she calls me upstairs to write a response to some show hosts who were saying that off air she was trashing the president. So wanted me to come up and help her craft a response to that. Well, I'm sitting on her laptop, her Apple laptop in her office, trying to type this up, and she forgets that she's sitting at her desk typing on her iPhone, which is synced to her computer. Not good, Stephen, not good. And it's a great lesson for everyone. Nothing accidentally good ever happens from synced iMessages. I will say that.
Sure.
So again, is there anything to that audio? Certainly doesn't elaborate very much. But it looks like it's just another example of somebody else that is capitulating, kowtowing, profiteering, opportunistic. And there's a lot of folks in the state of Alabama that are simply shaking their heads. Then if you take a look at the Daily Mail, they came out with an article. Cliff Sims has floated the idea of making a Senate bid in his native Alabama next year, considering a challenge to Doug Jones, the Alabama Democrat who defeated Roy Moore in 2017. I'm not going to get too terribly much into this. The article suggests that Sims may very well go and just be a missionary. Maybe he should do just that. Again, having worked briefly with the guy, I don't trust him. I don't know a lot of people that do. But what is really interesting to me is looking at the articles themselves and looking at the reporting themselves of the relationship that he had with his colleagues and staffers and how he was not necessarily well-liked, or people were suspicious of him, or they found him to be obnoxious at times and arrogant. It's interesting that much of the staffers from the previous place that he was employed in Birmingham, Alabama, felt the same way. And I was there firsthand to witness it. Read the book, make your own decisions. But at the end of the day, it looks exactly like what I think most people think it looks like. Just another pandering book to get a big fat advance for the purposes of making a buck off of the president and the media's hatred for him, while fabricating, or at least, at the very least, embellishing your true position within that organization. So again, Team of Vipers, I've got the entire audio here. I don't know that I want to get too much more into this because I just go, whatever. You're listening to the Heart of America right here on the Heart of America Talk Radio Network. Let's take a real quick one, come back to the other side. We're going to wrap this puppy up as we talk very briefly about what's going to happen with the State of the Union address and so much more. By the way, if you'd like to chime in, 929-477-3761. Stick around. We're coming right back on the other side. You are listening to the Heart of America Talk Radio Network. Heart of America and the Michael Hart Show is brought to you in part by the Unknown America Project. Unknown America, myths and little-known oddities about the greatest nation on earth, explores many of the falsehoods and fallacies and revisions in American history that impact the beliefs and the thoughts of many people in this country today. So if you'd like to learn some of the most enduring myths that have been perpetrated on the American public for the last 100-plus years in this country, go check out the book at heartofamerica.net. That's heartofamerica.net. And pick up a copy of Unknown America. It comes out to you absolutely no shipping, be autographed, and we'll even send you a copy of the United States Constitution as our way of saying thanks. So support the Unknown America Project by simply going to theunknownamerica.com, and thank you for your support. The Land Report, the magazine for the American landowner, is a proud supporter of the Michael Hart Show. Currently, they're offering an exclusive subscription price for listeners of the Michael Hart Show. So click on the subscribe button on landreport.com and enter the code HARTSHOW at checkout and receive a 1-year discount on America's #1 land magazine. You'll get a full year of the Land Report, which normally goes for $59, for only $15. That's a 75% savings off the cover price. Again, that's promo code HARTSHOW at checkout of thelandreport.com, and make sure to check out The Land Report on Facebook if you love land.
It's not right versus left. It's us versus them. It's the Michael Hart Show. Anyone can tell you the news.
We welcome Diamond and Silk.
Mark Zuckerberg will end up, and it's going to be a face without the book.
Book without the face.
Hey, Megan, how are you?
Now they're chipping away at the normalization of pedophilia, and the left is embracing this type of behavior.
We welcome Dinesh D'Souza.
I know I ticked him off. In a certain sense, it's a giant up yours to Obama, and that's why the left is freaking out over it.
Jack Kennedy and LBJ, Clinton, and the double standard from the left.
Yeah, I love how the left does nothing but push the most bizarre practices down our throats and up our tailpipes.
It takes a real man to tackle the hot issues that really matter.
Michael Hart is the man of this house.
Welcome to the Michael Hart Show.
Hey, welcome back to the program. Phones are 929-477-3761 as we prepare to mop this puppy up. Do want to remind you that Wednesday's edition of the program is The Unknown America. So we're going to be talking a lot about things you did not know about this country on tomorrow's broadcast. Friday will be our situational security broadcast. Thursday we'll be joined in studio, or live anyway, with Megan Barth. And so we invite you to make plans to attend that as well. Throughout the course of the last several years, I've been telling you that the media fabricates a lot of things in this country, whether that's intentional or not. They've got something to sell. It's interesting to note that last night on Colbert's program, as you heard in the audio, that Paul Simon was actually scheduled to come out until they got to Cliff Sims and realized that, hey, we're going to get to the Trump bashing first, because that's the way the media rolls in this country. You can believe that or not. I really don't even care. I mean, I really truly don't, because the fact of the matter is, I've been doing it for so long, I see that, how disgusting it really is. And so, you've got people out there that the basic pro forma is this: write a book, get on national TV, sell a book. Okay? Sounds simple enough, right? And then eventually, what you wrote about in the book becomes passé or no longer accurate or valid, or just boring, or people have read it. In other words, sales begin to taper off. So what do? You write another book. Very oftentimes, a lot of stuff in book number 2 is the same crap that was in book number 1. Then you go back to your media friends, and you go back on a book tour. This cycle is repeated over and over and over again. Even you heard in the audio, and Colbert asked about writing the second book. The point I'm making is this, is that there are a lot of people out there that capitalize on their name, on their position. That's what they do. They are, for all intent and purposes, the Ann Coulters of the world, who make outlandish accusations at times, although I like Ann, then go out and write a book, make more outlandish accusations, get press, sell books, go to the bank, buy that bass boat, and then start the process all over again when it begins to taper off in its popularity. And the media is unbelievably complicit in this. Nobody in America knows who Cliff Sims is, so why put him in front of Paul Simon? Well, because he knows who, everybody in the country knows who Donald Trump is. And that's the underlying theme here of what's being sold. because that's all that's going on. The truth be damned. Isn't it interesting how many of these pundits are able to craft these books and crank them out in 3 or 4 months? Some big event happens, and a month later, there's a book. It took me years to research Unknown America, and then I had to clean it up after I released it the first time, and still, frankly, there's a couple odds and ends I still want to change in it as I write the second. You've been hearing me talk about a second for a year. Why have I not released it? Because it takes time to get the stuff right. So how in the world are we expecting the rest of these folks to get the stuff right? You know what? I'll tell you why. Because the truth doesn't matter. You might think it does, but it legitimately does not matter in the minds of the media and the minds of a publisher. And you think about this for 1 second. By all reports, Cliff Sims receives an advance of at least $1 million. All we know is that it's 7 figures. $1 million. That's a lot of books to have to sell, $18, $19 a piece, because they know it's going to be sold, because they know the media is going to support it, because it's salacious enough and juicy enough, no matter how inaccurate it might be. And I honestly, I've not read it. I won't read it. Because as I shared with you, I don't trust the man's opinions. I don't trust his insights. But at the end of the day, now you know exactly how that process works. You, me, everybody in the world, every single day will be on the receiving end of hundreds of marketing messages meant to compel you to either agree, get on board, or open your wallet. And do not think for one moment that because that message comes from the media, that it's not every bit as commercial as an ad telling you need to lose weight, buy a car, or get this particular pill to make your life better. Churchgoers in Virginia could soon legally bring their guns alongside their Bible after a bill cleared the state Senate and sparked a heated debate about whether packing heat could help save lives or is a slap in the face of God. The bill passed on strictly partisan lines. 21 Republicans supported it and 19 opposed it, but the debate turned heated, apparently. Okay. The Republicans would be the ones that would most likely, at least percentage-wide, be more apt to be Christian. There's more, agnostics and atheists on the Democrat Party. That's not to say there aren't Democrat Christians. Of course there are. So who's making the argument it's a slap in the face of God? The atheistic Democrats? All right. To Republicans, not allowing religious houses to arm themselves is like leaving them as lambs to a potential slaughter. But for Democrats, lifting the ban would mean putting worshipers at risks of themselves. The bill would repeal a law that reportedly dates back to colonial times, which makes it a misdemeanor to carry a gun, pistol, or Bowie knife, dagger, or other dangerous weapon without good and sufficient reason to a place of worship while a meeting for religious purposes is being held at such a place. Virginia Republican Senator, a guy by the name of Richard Black, a veteran of the Vietnam War who wants to repeal the law, pointed to the mass shootings at a Sikh temple in 2012 and the African Methodist Church in South Carolina in 2015. I see no mention of the synagogue here, but that's, I guess, beside the point. These folks are uniquely vulnerable because they're lined up in a church pew. Exiting the pew is very difficult. It makes them an ultimate target. Either you cower in place or you fight back. Now, this is not necessarily a debate that we're going to have in the state of Alabama, because here in Sweet Home, carry that weapon. But again, it is interesting that it breaks down along partisan lines where Democrats, who for the most part are the ones that are least likely to hold religious beliefs, at least for the younger Democrats, that in fact you've got this slap in the face argument. The Democrat position is this. We are saying that with this bill, we no longer trust in God. We foolishly took prayer out of school, and now we want to take God out of church. How is carrying a weapon? That's all right. Under that argument, take your seatbelt off. Wearing a seatbelt with this argument shows a lack of faith in the protections of the Lord. If there's anywhere you trust God, it should be in church. You know, I don't know how y'all feel about this statement, and a lot of you might disagree with it, but I don't necessarily feel as though God's any more in church than he is within our lives, in our hearts, in our homes. We go there to congregate and worship him, but I feel his presence no matter where I am. Just an observation. Let's depend on God on this one. Let's not take God out of church. How is carrying a gun and a weapon taking God out of church? 929-477-3761. What's up, Clark?
Hey, so, well, on trusting God, anytime you have any kind of biblical question about which way you ought to be looking at something, if you have a red letter concordance, just look at what's in the red letters and take that. And I distinctly recall when Satan tempted Christ, he said, go ahead and jump. God will send angels. He'll take care of you. And I think Jesus replied, tempt not the Lord thy God. So at some point, we got to be responsible and make good decisions about our own safety, right?
I would think so.
I think that's got that covered. Let's switch over to Cliff Sims and his tell-all that he's got out. And I'm not going to read it either, but I am curious about your thoughts here. I've got to think that coming out with a book does a couple of things for Cliff. Number one, it makes it very hard for him to ever come back to any kind of conservative talk or anything like that. And I've got to think, number two, you never get inside of anything again once you do something like this. Now, does he figure he can switch to the other side and have a career there? Or does he make enough money off of this book that he can coast for a few years? I don't know. What's the thinking there? Because I got to think that you have to reinvent yourself after this, don't you?
You know, one would think, Clark, but something else to kind of bear in mind is that, and I can't give any specifics to this, but, you know, I'm hearing, and there have been some magazine or newspaper articles that have spoken to this, but I'm hearing that as the media circus begins to wind down, that there are discussions about legal actions against him. And if that's the case, you know, this book advance or whatever he gets off the book could be eaten up very quickly, because $1 million is $1 million. But then again, at the end of the day, it's only $1 million. And, you know, when you look at people like, you know, Roger Stone and Jerome Corsi, you know, for that matter, you know, the slimy Manaforts and Cohens of the world, they are being financially ruined, and they are in a much better position than Mr. Sims probably ever would be. Because when people are coming after you legally and you've got a lawyer up, it can get quite pricey. Now, you also have to enter in the fact of, you know, he has told some in the European press, or at least the European press is reporting, that he's eyeing a run for Senate in the state of Alabama. Are you kidding me? I mean, are you really, are you kidding me?
He pretty much screwed himself on that deal, didn't he?
It would seem so. It would certainly seem so. Now he does have friends. I'm sorry, say again?
I say maybe he forgot what state he came from.
Well, he does have friends in media and in politics in the state of Alabama. We won't know if they're going to start running for cover anytime soon or not. But I will say that I wouldn't vote for the guy just because of what I've learned in my time with him. And again, I didn't ask him for any kind of life-saving or life-changing help with anything, but, some pretty minuscule topical stuff that, I would say, hey, don't worry about it. I'll take care of this for you. And then it never happens. And when I start to see a pattern of somebody that's obviously self-serving and opportunistic, my hands just go up. I'll give anybody the benefit of the doubt once, twice, even 3 times. But, he would make claim after claim after claim that just never came to pass. And I'm sorry, there comes a point in time where I just no longer consider your opinions valid, your contributions dependable, or your insights viable.
Right. Well, I don't know. Just seems like to me that he severed a lot of, I don't know, I'm not sure how to articulate it. He's not going to be able to do what he used to do on the side he did it on. Does that make sense?
Well, think of it this way. A lot of people you have people on the right, and then you have people on the right that are part of Trump's base. The people that are part of Trump's base, the always Trumpers, aren't going to give Jeff Sessions the light of day because they feel like that he was feckless as Attorney General. That same group of people is going to have a very similar feeling about Cliff Sims because Sims is more in that kind of vacillating Sessions camp than he is the hardcore, always supporting the president camp. And although that has been factionalized, in time, in terms of political theory and theology, you can't win the Senate seat in the state of Alabama ostracizing Trump's base. They will not reward him with that seat. So exactly. I hope he's having a good time. But, at the end of the day, I think that he has exposed himself for being the political opportunist that a lot of us already knew that he was.
Well, I think probably he's capitalizing on what Joy Behar said a week ago. We all jumped on this because we so wanted it to be true.
Uh-huh.
And he's taking advantage, I think, of that situation. The thing that I would point out is I have a fairly good memory. And I cannot name you Comey's book. I got an idea of what the name of it was. And then there was the other guy, and then there was some other guy, and then there was a woman. We've had like 3 or 4 tell-all books that were going to be the downfall of Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm. And where are they now?
And my guess is probably, this is going to be all over the news cycle for a week or 2, and people that hate Trump will buy the book, and then it's going to
never
be
read it.
About.
Most of them will never read it.
Yeah. And, I'm not going to classify myself as an always Trumper, and I was pretty late buying a ticket for the Trump train because I just, I was not on board initially. But I got to say this. No matter how crazy is something he seems to be doing, it generally seems to work out for him in the long run. And
it does have that appearance.
Yeah. So, I don't know. He's either crazy like a fox or very lucky, one or the other. And I don't think you get to be a billionaire being lucky. So, probably crazy like a fox. And I've given up on second-guessing him on things because I'm with you, Clark. I'm with you because I wasn't on board in the early days. I thought it was a comedy road show. I really did. But as things have gone along, I know that you've been listening to me for some years now. I am a fiscal conservative, and I have been touting a businessman in the White House for many, many, many years. That's what we got.
I know some of his social and cultural stuff, drives some people nuts. I don't know a single friend that wouldn't stop tweeting a little bit. He's already tweeting about the Starbucks CEO, et cetera. Let it go. People, as it relates to Cliff Sims, say, let it go. Let's let this thing play itself out, because you're absolutely right. These authors that come out with these books, they're like when you're a youngster and you have a girlfriend and you break up with that girlfriend and you think you're going to die because you can't breathe because the love of your life is gone. And 20 years later, you can't even remember her name. And these people just fall off the radar almost instantaneously while destroying their careers for a sack full of gold or a sack full of silver. And so, they'll do it on the backs of trashing Trump. And, he gives them a little bit of, frankly, a lot of ammunition. But he seems to be accomplishing the things that, economically speaking, people like you and me wish that he had.
Yeah. I don't know. With Cliff's latest action, probably he ought to refer to Marlon Brando's speech in the car and on the waterfront. He could have been a contender instead of going for the short money.
Yeah.
Because he's going to have to find another venue moving forward. And,
right.
If that be on the left or something, I don't know. But anyway.
I don't know either. But I'm of the belief that his political career in the state of Alabama was just laid to rest. Clark, unfortunately, I'm out of time. I got to go, my friend, but thank you for the call.
You take care.
All right. Call me tomorrow. All right, guys, that's it for us. Going to wrap things up. Do want to remind you to go check out our friends over at Liberty One Tech for all your technological needs. They do such a bang-up job. Tally works so hard. He works tirelessly. So, support the people that support this program so that we can continue to spread the truth throughout this land. Tomorrow we're going to be doing the Unknown America broadcast. Go check out a copy of the book at theunknownamerica.com. Follow us on the Chirp app. Still putting a lot of good stuff out over there. Tell your family, tell your friends, and if you can spare $6, help keep us on the air by allowing us to purchase the equipment, the time, pay people for doing the jobs that have to be done. A lot of you guys have already jumped in there. We appreciate all the private support that we've gotten, but frankly, we need to. We'd like to grow this thing a little bit more. There's equipment that we need and personnel that we'd like to grow, because we really do believe that this nation is it's in trouble. And as long as you have people, even like our, whatever he is, Cliff Sims on the inside, you would think out there supporting our president and our leader, which behind the scenes, not only is he a viper, but I guess he also just entered the deep state as well. So anyway, support us at heartofamerica.net. Pick up a copy of the book at theunknownamerica.com, heartofamerica.net. Consider hitting on that Patreon button. Give it a try. Month or two, and you can even cancel after that. And just to show our gratitude, we will even send you a copy of The Unknown America absolutely free of charge. That's it for us. Back with you tomorrow with The Unknown America. You've been listening to The Michael Hart Show right here on the Heart of America Talk Radio Network.